Right to Life Radio is proudly sponsored by D's on Medicine and D's on Medicine. You know, it's not just any radio host that can combine stories happening on two opposite coasts of the United States, but, you know, you're not dealing with any mere mortals here. You're dealing with seasoned radio professionals. John Girardi from Right to Life of Central California and Jonathan Keller. We are here. We have a special guest on Right to Life Radio to break down two big abortion stories. There is a big story over the last few weeks. We haven't really covered it, I don't think, enough, so we've got a great guest on to discuss it. A big story involving abortions happening in the District of Columbia and the efforts of some pro-life activists to give dignity and burial to the bodies of some aborted children and retribution that they have suffered as a result, as well as what it has to do with our own situation here in California with AB 2223, the horrible bill that is, in many ways, more or less kind of sort of legalizing infanticide. Joining Jonathan, CEO of California Family Council, Jonathan Keller, joining Jonathan and me is Mary Margaret Olohan. Mary Margaret is a reporter for the Daily Wire and writes really extensively on social conservative issues and things of that sort. And we welcome her to Right to Life Radio. Welcome, Mary Margaret.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you on. I'm bummed that Laura Ingraham got you first because, you know, I've been following you on Twitter for a long time, but, you know, hey, I guess she's got a bit more clout than we do. Anyway, so Mary Margaret was on Laura Ingraham's TV show on Fox earlier. So, Mary Margaret, why don't you just sort of break down kind of the basics of this DC abortion story? It involves this pro-life activist named Lauren Hanna. And I had even just between work and stuff had a difficult time following all the details of it. But essentially, she's getting in trouble for just trying to give these aborted children a decent burial.
Yeah, so it is a very confusing storyline, and the fact that mainstream media didn't report it properly in the first place does not help. So basically, Lauren Hanna is a member of the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. So is Teresa Bukanovic, I believe is how you pronounce her last name.
Mm-hmm. We're longtime friends with Teresa. She was the head of the pro-life group in San Francisco. So Jonathan and I are buddies with her. So yeah. Anyway, continue.
So Teresa and Lauren, this is what they told me based on, and I as far as I can tell, this is what happened so far. So Teresa and Lauren went down to Washington Surgery Clinic, which is an abortion clinic here in DC, and Boggy Bottom, which is kind of a business area near Georgetown. Mm-hmm. These two went down to this abortion clinic, and they noticed this big truck outside that said Curtis Bay Medical Waste Facility. And the driver of that truck was loading boxes into it, and on a dolly, they could see two boxes that had this labeling all over it. And so they tell the driver, they're on a hunch right now. They don't know for sure. They tell the driver there's aborted babies in that box. And the driver was, understandably horrified when he heard this. And they told him, can we take the box? And they said that they wanted to give the babies a proper burial. So the driver agreed to this. And the lady said that he told them that he had already scanned the box in. So it was unlikely that anyone would notice it was gone. So they told me they took this box home. They were pretty sure that there were aborted babies in it, but they weren't sure yet. They hadn't opened it. They went and got a lot of medical supplies. They tried to get a priest to be present. They couldn't do that. But then they took a video of them opening the box and finding all these aborted baby remains in this box. And they told me they found 110 small containers containing pulverized first trimester babies, and then 5 preemie-sized babies that they photographed and that live action photographed that appear to have been late-term abortions, and that they believe, and a lot of lawmakers are saying as well, may have been the victims of illegal partial birth abortions that may have also violated the Born Alive Protection Act.
Right.
And what that means, it's a lot of lingo, but what that means is that they think that the abortionist at this clinic, Dr. Santangelo, may have aborted these babies or allowed them to die after they were born, or he may have performed illegal partial birth abortions, which were banned in 2003 if the baby is alive when they're performed.
Right.
So there's a lot going on here.
Right. Well, can you tell us a little bit? So they found these babies. They successfully buried most of the children, but they preserved the bodies of these 5 late term either aborted or possibly delivered and then killed babies. What happened next? As far as it then appears that Lauren was trying to get someone to investigate, but herself got in trouble. So what was the next step in the process?
Yeah, so they told me that they gave the 110 babies to a priest who buried them. I haven't determined that for myself. I don't know who that priest is.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't tell me out of concern for his privacy.
Sure.
And then, like you said, they kept the 5 babies. Now, through their lawyer, they said they alerted the police that they had these babies in their possession because they wanted a medical examiner to examine them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right around that same time frame, they said that, in a separate incident that happened in October 2020, Lauren Hanna and a couple other members of the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising had pushed their way into an abortion clinic in, I believe that it's what they call a rescue. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're more familiar with the language than I am.
Yeah.
And so they had pushed their way into an abortion clinic, and they had gotten in trouble with the law in this incident for kind of,
trespassing.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now they had heard that the FBI was preparing to arrest some of them. And so Lauren and Teresa told me that after they opened that box with the babies, they were keeping the babies in Lauren's apartment because they felt like it was kind of a morgue and they didn't want to sleep there. So Lauren was sleeping at Teresa's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And they got up really early one day and drove back to Lauren's apartment in an Uber. And as they got out of the Uber, they said that FBI got out of their cars, authorities got out of their cars at her home and arrested Lauren. And Teresa told me that she was there with Lauren and she assumed, of course, that the FBI had the babies in their possession. Well, Teresa said she went into the house and the babies were still there and that she was very thankful that they hadn't been taken.
So on what charge then were they arresting Lauren? I guess that's one thing that I'm a bit confused.
So the charge they were arresting Lauren on, as far as we know, it didn't have anything to do with the babies that were found in her apartment. As far as we know, it only had to do with the October 2020 incident. But the timing definitely is odd. It's very strange timing.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent that letter to the authorities who then came and got the babies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, media reported this as police discover babies in anti-abortion activists' home. Not really what happened, but the police themselves didn't really help in this area because they said in a press release to media that they received a tip that led them to the babies. So a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that that's typical police language for this kind of thing, but I don't know how hard it would have been to say that the people who had the babies said, please come get them, So
seemingly what's going on here is federal authorities. And I guess if you're in the District of Columbia, any police authorities are federal authorities because it's the District of Columbia. It's federally controlled. So for reporting, hey, we've discovered the bodies of 5 children who may have been aborted under unlawful circumstances, what this prompts is an arrest for an October of 2020 trespass allegation, as opposed to, hey, let's maybe investigate this abortion provider to see maybe if he's actually like murdering children, born American citizens or performing
Well, I haven't established in my capacity as a reporter, I have not established a direct link between those things.
Okay.
But I will say that the timing is very odd.
Well, John, I just want to chime in here. I think that's an outrageous assertion. I mean, when have we ever seen pro-life activists arrested after exposing very likely wrongdoing?
Oh, wait, like David DeLayden and all kinds of people. Anyway, yeah. So, okay, well, the next step of this that I want to talk about is your visit to Dr. Santangelo's abortion clinic. And I know you discussed it a bit on Laura Ingram's program, but maybe just describe for our folks listening, because you actually, I think a lot of our listeners are pro-life people who have not had the experience of going into an abortion clinic. I don't know. I'm guessing you had not had a similar experience. So tell us about your experience visiting, what kind of things you saw, what were some of the more remarkable things from that visit?
Yeah. So I, as you said, I've been reporting on this a lot. I had spent almost, I think I had spent an entire week trying to get authorities to give me answers. I'd gone back and forth with the mayor's office, with the DC medical examiner, with the Metropolitan Police Department. I had been calling the clinic. I had been calling Planned Parenthood. I had been calling everybody, and I couldn't get any answers. And so I was really frustrated. And because I could see where this was going. DC authorities were hoping that it would just die down and everyone would stop talking about it.
Sure.
So it was raining. It was kind of a gross morning. And I decided, what the heck, I'm going to go ask these answers in person, as any good reporter does. So I got up and went to Dr. Santangelo's house, knocked on the door. He didn't answer. I don't believe he was home. So I drove to the clinic, which was only a little bit away from his house. He owns a very fancy house in Georgetown, by the way, which I think seems that he pays for with all the money he makes from aborting babies in Foggy Bottom. So go to his clinic, and it's in this big building. On the fourth floor of the building, there's a hallway when you get out of the elevator, and then there's the door. And, they've got all kinds of signs on it that say you need to wear masks. I believe they have a sign up that says that there's a video camera outside the door, and you can see that video camera. And so I kind of hesitated at the door because I was going in there for answers. I wasn't trying to make a scene, and I didn't have a mask with me. So I started searching through my purse looking for a mask, and I haven't worn them in a while. I wear them only when I have to. So
well, yeah, you gotta be safe in a clinic where 50% of the patients die. So anyway,
Yep.
Sorry.
No,
All right,
it's true.
Sorry. All right, go ahead.
Well, I'm
thick.
looking.
Yeah.
I'm looking in there for a mask, and right then this girl comes out the door, and there's a guy behind her. And I was very focused on the moment, so I didn't really pay much attention to them. But I did notice that the girl seemed stressed and upset. And once the door was open, I knew that people had seen me, and I didn't want to awkwardly stand out there in the hall and draw attention. So I just walked in, and I walked up to the desk, and I immediately asked the girl behind it, one of the abortion clinic staffers, if I could have a mask so that I could, chat with her without causing any alarm.
Yeah.
And she gave me one and was nice and asked if I had an appointment. And I told her no. And she said, what can I help you with? And I said, I'm here to talk to Dr. Santangelo. And she asked why. And I said, I'm a reporter with the Daily Wire. We talked on the phone. I would like to talk to him, and I'd like to talk to you too. And she was very unhappy. She did not like that I was there. She told me they had nothing to tell me. And when I kept asking her questions, she went into the back and got another clinic worker who came out. And this lady also told me that they had nothing to tell me.
Okay.
And both of them, I don't think they were accustomed to reporters coming into the clinic. There's nothing that says I can't go into the clinic and ask them a question, but I think that they just were unaccustomed to that. And when they continued to tell me that they had nothing to tell me, I left, because I wasn't going to force myself on them.
Yeah.
And, I noticed that there were people in the clinic that were listening, and I'm sure that the clinic workers were worried about them overhearing what I was saying. But I told them as I left, I said, look, there's a lot of authorities looking into this. You guys, we're going to get answers eventually. You guys don't want to be on the wrong side of this. And they insisted that they wouldn't talk to me. And this is something I haven't talked a lot about, but I did notice that one of the clinic workers, the first one I talked to, she was sitting down when the other one was kind of aggressively telling me they had nothing to say. And that first clinic worker was not making eye contact with me. She was looking at the wall, and she was listening very intently, but she looked really uncomfortable. And I looked at her and I said, I will talk to you off the record. You can talk to me any way you want. Please reach out to me. And I do wonder if I'll hear from her eventually, because she looked very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of experience outside of our local abortion clinic, just with the sketchiness of people coming in and out, and the kinds of people who just seem so distressed going in and out.
Right.
Yeah. Now, with all of this, one of the things of local interest for us in California is AB 2223, which is this really bad bill before the California legislature. We'll talk about it later on in the show more. We just had a big lobby day in Sacramento against it. And you've done some reporting on it and talked with some people about it. Particularly there's, one of the things that I thought was so similar to the Lauren Hanna situation is how basically this bill is completely disincentivizing coroners and investigators from looking into whether it's late-term miscarriages or late-term abortions or perinatal death. And I don't know if you added any thoughts on that as it relates to what you've seen with the lack of interest in DC and looking at what are very, very suspicious looking abortions. That it sort of seems like the dominant view among these liberal jurisdictions is we don't even if there's going to be another Kermit Gosnell somewhere, we don't want to know about it. It seems to me like that's the thrust here with AB 2223.
Oh, that's exactly the attitude that I've noticed in general with pro-abortion advocates or lawmakers, DC officials. They don't want to know. Mm-hmm. And, here in DC, the authorities have said that the babies were legally aborted. Well, there's no laws restricting abortion in DC.
Yeah.
So, I would love to get more details on how they believe that those babies were legally aborted, because as far as I know, they could have been aborted in pretty much any way and it would still be legal around here.
Well, sure. Well, it's also the thing. How can you know they were legally aborted rather than in an illegal partial birth abortion or delivered and then killed? How can you know unless you investigate it? I mean, right. It's just sort of like just by fiat, we're just going to declare they're all legal.
Right. And there's no interest in it whatsoever. And we have the most pro-abortion presidential administration in history right now in office. And so, we don't need to, I've reached out to the White House. I've gotten nothing from them. And then Mayor Bowser, DC is incredibly pro-abortion. So this is not something that I expect that we will get answers from these officials on.
And the letter the letter that Mayor Bowser released, I mean, she essentially, I know you said we haven't established an official link between the arrest and the revelations, but wasn't that essentially what she kind of hinted at in her own letter, pushing back against this? She kind of blamed the investigators instead of allowing any thought that there could be criminal wrongdoing going on?
Yes, she definitely insinuated, basically said that the progressive anti-abortion uprising activists, Lauren and Teresa and any others that participated, she accused them of tampering with fetal remains, and which, it's kind of ironic that would be the crime that we're focusing in here on.
For the people who are just trying to give them a decent human burial. That is horrible tampering with fetal remains. Yeah.
Right. And the fact that she's admitting that those were fetal remains, well, they were found in a box covered in labeling of Curtis Bay Medical Waste Facility, which says they do not incinerate fetal remains, which means that the clinic was breaking their contract with Curtis Bay Medical Waste Facility by sending baby body parts to be burned in this incinerator.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's take one step back to explain that. So that's one thing I had heard was, and maybe you can clarify this, that there was some accusation that the medical waste facility was burning the medical waste they have, which in this case includes the bodies of aborted children, and that there was some connection to powering energy resources in Baltimore or something. Is that true, or can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a point I don't know a ton about, but I can say that Curtis Bay does say that they convert their waste into energy. They have been very reticent when I reached out to them and I've tried to talk to them. At first, they just completely denied that they would ever burn fetal remains, and they said that the boxes were not taken from them. Now, we have photographic evidence showing otherwise, and they still won't acknowledge it. And since authorities apparently are not interested in holding them accountable, I don't really know what will happen next. But that means that the Washington Surgery Clinic was breaking their contract with this medical waste facility by sending aborted fetal remains to be incinerated. Now, Curtis Bay should take issue with that. That should be a big problem for them. I don't know if it is. They won't tell me.
Well, Mary Margaret, I wish I could have you on for the full hour, but we got to go. Where can people find you and your work? I follow you on Twitter, and you're a great follow at, you want to give folks your Twitter handle and where they can find you at Daily Wire?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is Mary Marg Olohan. Twitter would not let me do the whole name. It's a little too long for them. But you can follow me there. You can also follow me on Instagram at Mary Margaret Olohan, and you can find my work at the Daily Wire under my byline, which is, again, my name. And all right. That's where I am. All
right. Well, wonderful. Mary Margaret, thank you so much for being on. It was great to have you, and we'll have to have you on some other time for hopefully a happier story than this one. So anyway, God bless, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. When we return, we'll talk a little bit about our trip up to Sacramento for the big rally against AB 2223. That is next on Right to Life Radio. Our thanks to Mary Margaret Olohan from the Daily Wire for joining us. That was a wonderful interview. Thanks to Mary Margaret and for all of her great reporting. Definitely someone to follow on Twitter and at the Daily Wire. So, for segment 2, before our good buddy Jonathan Keller gets here and he'll talk more, I want to talk really quickly and express some gratitude to a bunch of people for our bus trip to Sacramento earlier this week regarding AB 2223. Earlier this week on Tuesday, AB 2223 had its hearing in the Assembly Health Committee. And sort of last minute, we at Right to Life of Central California threw a bus together to take people up to Sacramento to lobby against the bill. We had all of our nice bright blue Right to Life T-shirts, so we all stood out. Like a sore thumb in this sea of people. We sort of prepped our team on the way up about the nature of the bill. We had our letters of opposition that we passed out to different legislators from the San Joaquin Valley, and we had a great time. We were able to walk through the legislative offices of the various members of the State Assembly and State Senate, give them our letters of opposition, talk with staff, interact, and make our opposition known, which was really good, a really valuable experience. Got to walk through the Capitol a bit, which was a little odd. I hadn't been in the state capitol since before COVID, and a lot of things are changed. They're doing a lot of renovations to the Capitol Annex, and they took the big statue of Christopher Columbus and Queen Isabella out of the Capitol Rotunda, which is kind of sad. It was a big old, very beautiful statue. I guess Christopher Columbus canceled left and right. But it was a really great time. There were about over 2,000 pro-lifers from throughout California who were in attendance. Our thanks to our own Jonathan Keller for organizing all that, and Jonathan will be on in just a second to talk with us all about it. But just a word of great gratitude to our friends from Tulare King's Right to Life. Sue, the Tulare King's board chairperson, she was there, chairwoman, she was there with a whole bunch of folks from Tulare King's Right to Life, Araceli and the whole gang. A bunch of folks came up from Visalia and the South Valley to join us on the bus, which was great. We got to testify at the Assembly Health Committee, which was really cool. Basically, you have 2 minutes. You have 4 minutes of expert testimony in favor of the bill, 4 minutes of expert testimony in opposition to the bill, and then they have what's called Me Too testimony, where basically anyone in the public can come up to the microphone and say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I oppose the bill." So our whole group was able to go to the microphone and express our opposition. Me on behalf of Right to Life of Central California, Sue on behalf of Tulare King's Right to Life. So it was really cool. It was really cool, and I'm really gratified that we were able to go to experience a real lobby day at the Capitol and interact with people. It was really cool. It was a bit hectic because there were, I guess, the American version of the Canadian trucker, Freedom Trucker, whatever convoy was there. So a whole bunch of semi-trucks were driving around the Capitol honking their horns extremely loudly, which was a bit chaotic, but that's okay. It made it a little difficult for our bus driver to find a place to park. But anyway, we had a really great time, and I'm really gratified that we were able to go. All right. Our own Jonathan Keller will be joining us next to talk about the big lobby day in Sacramento. This is Right to Life Radio on Power Talk. It's the theme from the Jeffersons here on Right to Life Radio.
This is Right to Life Radio.
We're moving on up with our good buddy Jonathan Keller here. Having a great radio show today. We had a great interview with Mary Margaret Olohan from the Daily Wire, talking about some of the bad stuff in AB 2223. And the man of the hour when it comes to AB 2223 is one Mr. Jonathan Keller for helping organize an enormous spur-of-the-moment rally in Sacramento against this horrific bill. So, Jonathan, I talked a little bit about our little bus trip up to D.C. I brought about 40-something folks from Right to Life in Fresno and Tulare King's Right to Life. But you brought a grand total, us included, of somewhere possibly around like 3,000 or 4,000 people. So, well, at least according to that one security guard we talked with at the Capitol. Tell us, what were the total numbers you got? How did you get this whole thing whipped up where we had thousands of people at the Capitol to protest against this horrible abortion bill?
Well, I want to start and say that it was definitely a team effort. I don't know that my friends Gina Gleason from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, or Karen England from Capital Resource Institute will listen to Right to Life Radio, but
they need due credit.
They need due credit. What happened was a couple of weeks ago, we were hearing about this bill. Obviously, we knew it was going to be a big deal, and we knew it was going to be heard in the hearing for the Judiciary Committee, Assembly Judiciary. And we knew it was going to be too soon to organize something for that day, and we were debating, so what should we do? When should we try to set up something? And I looked at the calendar and I said, well, if it passes on that day, the soonest that they could hear it because of the calendar would be on the 19th of April. We were just like looking, for those of you who are not as familiar with the whole process of the California State Assembly.
It is fraught with stupidity, the entire legislative process in Sacramento.
That is putting it mildly. But the one thing that I will say, John, that is at least marginally nicer as compared to states that have a much shorter legislative session. Our legislative hearings, essentially, like, they're very kind of laissez-faire in the sense that, we'll do one hearing a week, and we'll just, we'll hear a bunch of bills.
Sure.
Yeah,
they
sorry,
with a big old sneezer.
Yeah, as I sneeze off microphone.
There you go.
So the one advantage of that is that if you're in a state that has a compressed legislative calendar, I mean, literally, it could be any time of the day, any time of the week, maybe, 6 days a week, you've got hearings going on. I talked to our friends in Virginia, and they're like, during the session, it's only 45 days long, but
yeah,
we've got
because they live in
14-hour days.
Yeah, they live in a sane state rather than a year-long legislative process.
The only advantage to that I will say is that it does give you a little bit more time to plan. So we looked at it and we said, all right, they're going to have the Judiciary Committee hearing on the 5th. We're expecting they're probably going to pass it, but we were able, just on pretty short notice, to get 150 people to show up for that. And that should have been an indication to us. We should have realized this is going to be like ridiculous and off the chain. But we decided, all right, so if it passes, we know there's no hearings the week of Easter. The earliest possible hearing for the bill would be April 19th, Tuesday, April 19th. That's the next time, 1:30 p.m., that's the next time it's meeting. And we were waiting. We hadn't heard anything. Even as of late last week, Easter week, we had not heard anything about the bill being heard. And we said, well, maybe they're going to try to wait. Maybe they heard about the rally. Maybe they saw we pulled a permit. Maybe they want to wait and, push it back to the 26th or something.
But regardless, the hearing was set for that Tuesday.
It was set.
And you got thousands of people to show up. So
and
who all was there showing up? Like, what church groups were there? Was it a lot of Sacramento people, Southern California people? How did you get that many people up?
I realized that we got a broad audience for this show. There is a pastor down in Southern California named Jack Hibbs.
Pastor Jack.
He is a really cool dude. I can't remember, John, if you ever met him when you were working with us.
I'm sure I've met him before, and I know him very well by reputation. He's an extremely pro-life pastor from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills.
Yes, really great guy. Just like super friendly and very solid on every one of these pro-life issues. He also, John, just as a side note, I found out that during COVID and everything, he was one of those churches that kind of pushed the envelope a little bit and was continuing to meet during COVID.
Right.
And as a result, he garnered a much larger following than even I realized before this event.
Okay. And so he basically encouraged a whole bunch of people from all over the state to show up.
To put it in perspective, our friends at Family Research Council, they have about 250,000 followers on Facebook.
Right.
Pastor Jack himself has over 500,000 followers.
Oh, just himself. Okay.
So you have this
so that's how
national...
he got some people up there.
Yeah. So, I mean, he rallied the troops, and it was...
Now, let me ask you what you did with those troops once they were rallied up there. So one of the things you did was you made sure that your people were trained in how to lobby. So maybe talk about some of the the lobbying trainings you had across the street from the Capitol at the Hyatt.
Yeah, so this is something that was actually the first time CFC has done this since I've been here. We decided we were going to, splurge, plunk down the money, and partnering with our friends at Capital Resource Institute and at Real Impact / Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. We were going to rent the Hyatt and use it as our ground zero for training. And originally we thought, okay, again, we'll get a couple hundred people. We'll do a training at 9 a.m. We'll put people into lobby groups and go over and lobby and then do a small press conference. Well, within 24 hours of us opening the training, we were over 300 reservations.
Right. Well, and Jonathan and I are buddies and text all the time. And every time I asked Jonathan how it was going, it was always like 200 more people had signed up than the last time I had asked him.
Yes.
And he's like, oh my gosh, we're at 500. Oh my gosh, we're at like 800. Oh my gosh, we're at like 1,100. Oh my gosh. How many registered people did you wind up with? Which does not account for groups like ours, which totally didn't register. But like, how many registered participants did you actually have in this?
So I think our final registered participants was like 2,200.
Yeah. And so with all these people, you were kind of training them like, this is how you go to the Capitol. You knock on this is how you talk with your legislative staff. You go to their office. You knock on the door. You drop off a letter. And it's this kind of basic. We were able to I was able to train our Fresno Right to Life people about this, like in the bus on the way up. But it's such a cool thing actually in Sacramento. And I'm glad it's kind of almost gone back to normal since COVID, that you really can just walk in and just knock on a legislator's door, and all of a sudden you're talking with their staffers and giving them letters, and you're lobbying. Like, there you are.
It's not as intimidating as I think a lot of people are afraid of. I will also say, though, John, that unfortunately I think a lot of these legislators, and especially their staff, have kind of gotten really used to the COVID protocols of, people will just send us emails, which we will ignore. Or they will make phone calls to us, which we will ignore. Or they'll send in letters and postcards, which we will ignore. And the prospect of actually having a citizen with a bone to pick show up at your door.
Yeah. Well, and we did this with Joaquin Arambula's office, and it's like, hi, we're from Fresno, and we drove up here today, and we're constituents of yours.
Yep.
And we want you to vote this way on this bill because we think it's really bad, and here's our letter of opposition, and we're all voters, and at least half of us live in your district. Like, there's something to be said about that. Now, they do keep track of how many phone calls they get on a bill. They do keep track of how many letters they get on a bill. But yeah, there's something about direct face-to-face interaction.
And that's why I think you did see, we heard this over and over again, you did see some of these legislative offices, especially one particular party, that had their staff
all their
say,
doors were locked.
I'm sorry, we're in meetings. We're previously occupied.
Yeah, like all of these, as Jonathan dies of coughing, all of these different legislative offices, they were all like locked. And they had signs up that said, we're in meetings right now. But for a lot of them, we just knocked anyway.
Yep.
And we did get a staffer come open the door, and we were like, hey.
One of my favorite videos from the recap video we did, John, is a citizen lobbyist shoving the packet underneath the door.
Yeah.
And saying, you're going to look at this whether you like it or not.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that happened. I think that happened to several legislators' offices. All right. We'll talk about what are the next steps for AB 2223. What are the ways in which it could possibly be stopped? Next on Right to Life Radio, a production, as always, Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. It's the Beatles. I gotta admit, it's getting better. Although, actually, I objectively think it's getting worse in Sacramento politics.
It depends on how you measure that.
Also, this is like from the Beatles' absolute worst album. I can't stand Sgt. Pepper's.
You don't like Sgt. Pepper's? Wow.
It was 20 years ago today. Sgt. Pepper's Band began to play.
Wow, this might be, for all the grief I get about my music and pop culture takes, this might be your worst music take.
Look, I like a lot of Beatles albums, but I just can't stand Sgt. Pepper's.
That one, like,
not all. I guess
start to finish,
it's
a
mostly
pretty solid album.
I guess it's mostly just
The actual Sgt. Pepper.
The actual Sgt. Pepper's, yeah. But I don't know. I just feel like the Beatles were better before they got all druggy, which is probably my most lame old fart conservative opinion I have, which is impressive for me, given my sterling track record of lame old fart conservative opinion having. All right, Right to Life Radio. Okay, Jonathan.
All right.
What's up next for AB 2223? It passed the Assembly Health Committee on Tuesday, party line vote. A couple weeks prior, it passed the Assembly Judiciary Committee. What is its next steps? Does it go to Assembly Appropriations? I wasn't sure about that point. So it is going to go to Appropriations. That's the next step.
And I want to point out to everybody there, if you want to find out more about this bill all throughout the process, we have set up a special website that is just dedicated to all news, updates, and things regarding AB 2223. It is quite simply ab2223.org. ab2223.org. You can go there and bookmark it. You can find it out, whatever you want, whenever you want.
All right. Now, in our last 2 minutes here, I think a lot of our supporters were disappointed that it passed the Health Committee. I was not disappointed because I kind of expected that would happen. But I do think there has been a lot of good work, and I believe it was Assemblymember Waldron who pointed out during the hearing, just there are so many glaring problems with this legislation. It's so poorly written. I do think there's a chance that the Democrats could pull it if they think that it's so poorly written and maybe it's more of a headache for them than it's worth.
I do think let me say this. I do think that's a possibility. I'm mildly shocked that not a single Democrat abstained from the vote. The fact that it was literally a straight party line vote.
Well, and Chad Mays didn't vote on it,
which is
thanks, Chad.
In keeping with him being the only independent member of the legislature. I have no opinion on anything.
Yeah. I have absolutely no spine whatsoever. Sorry.
Let me quickly, John, read one thing.
We are not endorsing or opposing Chad Mays for whenever his next election is.
I want to quickly read one line of questioning or one statement. Senator Melendez from the Senate. She has been absolutely amazing on this. She hasn't heard the bill in her committee yet, but she tweeted after the hearing, "I've now watched AB 2223 go through 2 committees with, all caps, not one question being asked of the author. A bill this consequential that will affect the lives of millions forevermore if passed, and not one question. This is shameful."
So real quickly, Jonathan, it'll have a vote in appropriations in a couple of weeks. It'll get a final vote on the Assembly floor.
Probably sometime in May.
And then the process starts over again in the Senate after that. So there's still a lot of time to engage on this bill, and we will continue to be engaged from Right to Life of Central California. All right, our thanks to Jonathan Keller for being on the show. Our thanks to Mary Margaret Olohan from the Daily Wire. Thank you all so much for listening, for supporting Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org if you want to learn more or support us. Thank you so much. This is John Girardi for Right to Life Radio.